Hi everyone, I'm Toby. I don't have a nice PR photo and big blurb like Solomon did, so I'll just talk to you a little bit about myself. So I, prior to my current job, worked as well in the financial industry, and that's actually where I met Dennis. We did a lot of work with Puppet and Ansible, you know, day to day really. We kind of lived and breathed it with an organization like where we worked. We had 5,000 odd virtual machines, so really that's not something you can just log into. We came across a problem when we moved across to Ansible, and that was understanding your infrastructure. So the problem that we were having on a daily basis was, can I get some information? Can you tell me how many Red Hat servers do we have in the London data center, as an example? Or how many servers are running a licensable product? You know, you take your IBM software or your Oracle middleware software. Depending on your organization, you might have to report your numbers back to those providers, and getting those numbers out is sometimes quite difficult. If you've got Puppet, it's a bit easier. You've got puppetDB, and if you structure your custom facts and things like that, you know, it's really, really powerful. We moved over from Puppet to Ansible, and I found myself, in fact, Dennis worked for me at the time, you know, saying, right, I need this information. And Dennis and the guys that worked for me just kind of looked at me with a blank face, being a bit like, well, you just lost that because we've just moved from Puppet to Ansible. I'm like, come on, surely just curl a database somewhere. We're going to have this information somewhere. Out the box, you don't have that information. Yeah, you can do some funky stuff with Ansible to collect some data and store it in Tower if you have Tower. But it's not persistent, it's not kept up to date, etc., etc. So out of that problem, Dennis and I worked together and created what we're calling AnsibleDB. So take, for example, a playbook that updates a local SE Linux context. You only want to run that on servers that have got SE Linux enabled. Otherwise, if you run that in Ansible, you're going to have to go to every single server that you have. And yeah, your playbook might have is SE Linux enabled before it, you know, goes and does its configuration, but you're still, you know, doing that on every single server. What would be far quicker would be to only do it on the servers that need it. Now, if you don't have that information, you're not going to be able to do that. So we created AnsibleDB. So it's fast, and Dennis will do a demonstration of it. The information is straight up to date, so you know it's not going to be stale information. I'm sure many of you that rely on CMDBs have the same frustrations that we have, that you can look at a CMDB and kind of go, no, that's wrong, that's not right. You know, you can use this as a CMDB, or use it to feed a CMDB. So it's two components. We've got an API, obviously, and an Ansible plugin. So the Ansible plugin, when you're running your playbooks, gathers that information, sends it to the API, and then you can, you know, use that API to pull that information in. And you know, Dennis will show you, but you know, as Solomon showed, using just some very simple JQ, you can format the information exactly as you want. And you can also create dynamic inventories from it. So the example I gave earlier about SE Linux, you could actually use a dynamic inventory to only pull the servers that have got SE Linux enabled and only run your playbook on that. So I'm going to pass over to Dennis now to give a demonstration of it. If you've got any questions, I will field the questions for you, Dennis, while you're talking.
Nice. Yeah. I'll just set my share up. Hopefully it won't all die. Here we go. Okay, right, so I've just started sharing, so if you can let me know when you can see it, that'd be great.
Yeah, we can see it.
Brilliant. Right, okay, so I'm going to give you a demo. Before we start, I just wanted to let you know that We've started a Slack channel because we know that people are going to try and install it or try and do stuff and they won't necessarily know how. So this document that I'm going to go through, which has got all the examples in and all of the JSON queries and how to use dynamic facts with an example script, you can have that copy of that file. It's going to be in the Slack channel. So if you go to this link, you can sign up. Oh, there you go. Oh, no, that's something else I'm using. You can go to that URL from Toby, and you'll get a chance to log in, sign up, and then we'll add you to the Slack channel, and you get the documentation. And then if you have any questions, you just pop them in there, and one of us will be able to answer, or other members of the community will be able to answer you. Okay, so today I'm going to cover what data we're actually collecting. Come back. So what data we're collecting, the initial setup of the API, some JQ examples to pull out some useful information, and quickly cover dynamic inventories with some demo scripts that you can use yourself to actually pull out specific information on specific servers and then target them with Ansible. So what data is collected? So we use the Ansible setup module. It's a fairly standard module. It's been around for a long time. It's sort of well understood by lots of people, but if you haven't set it up before, this is an Azure server I've just logged into running RHEL 8.2 or CentOS 8.2, and we can see it's full of lots and lots of information, you know, very similar sort of file in look and feel to what you just saw from Solomon. It collects data, IP addresses, IPv6, it has different devices, it has memory, CPU, lots and lots of useful data, but very, very, you know, difficult to get when you look at it like that. But that's the sort of thing we're going to collect, and we're going to collect that on all the servers that we're currently going to manage. So the initial setup, we just have to go to our website. So this link will take you to here and to the AnsibleDB API open source. So you don't even need to clone it. We've set up a handy little script that you can install with. So if you log into the server where you want to install this, and you can do it in localhost as well. I'm going to do it on a remote server, and you need to be root to do it. So pop up to root. I'm in AWS at the moment, just because it's handy for me. So that's going to install. And if we come back here, so yeah, this repo's for the API. So once we set that up, we're then going to set up the AnsibleDB open source. And that's just plain Ansible that runs and collects facts for us and then passes them to the database. So that should just take a second. When it finishes, it gives you what to run. So if I'm going to just no-hup it and put it in the background. There are other methods to run this as a service, which you're free to use. So at the moment, I'm just going to pop that in the background, have a quick look at NetStat, and we can see that we're running on port 5000, which is handy. So if I come out of this server, go back to the server I'm going to run everything from, and just do telnet, just to prove it's open, this IP address and port 5000. I've got a connection, so we're up and running. So come out of that. So it's waiting, listening for the next step. So the next thing we're going to do is go to the open source location in GitHub. You just follow that link, and it will take you here. Actually, follow that link and you'll go to Ansible Galaxy. So obviously we have to have it in GitHub if we want it in Galaxy. So if you go to the main README file, everything you need to know is in this one file. It tells you how to set it up with all the information. So if we literally, I'm in a demo directory. I've got a few other files here I'll explain in a minute. If we install the Galaxy collection here, and because we get that error, it's not an error, we get the warning because we're doing it locally and not in the usual place. That creates the collections directory. If you're doing it for the first time, you may need to install Python requests. So there's how to do that. Once you've set up API DB, move on to this step. So I've already set up a deploy file. So it's exactly the same. You just cut and paste it straight out. It's just pure Ansible. And I've made a group files all. So if you just cat that file, you just need to create this directory, that file, and then add this line in and obviously update your location. So that's mine. And then some optionals if you want an Ansible CFG file. I have some recommendations here. so that you don't have to add it in on the command line and you can have your own inventory. So if we have a quick look at the inventory, the standard sort of inventory where you list it out by different types, so it's fairly standard. So now if you just literally run Ansible, the Ansible playbook, the deploy.yaml, that will hopefully go off, connect to all my different servers. This first run doesn't take too long because it's just a setup file. So we're on about, what, 25, 30 servers. So those purple messages are warnings. It's because the way I've set it up. In a minute, for the second part of the demo, we're going to download custom extensions. And inside there, I've got everything you need to basically set up your own facts on your own servers and then collect the data. And then you can just add to it. It's fairly simple to just add your own roles or your own playbooks in there, and then collect your own facts and customize it. So it's already posting, so that's done. So if we go back to the document, you will need JQ. So if you want to install it, here's a couple of examples for apt and yum. And we're going to collect. So if we just run this curl command, obviously change out the IP address. The one that I used earlier, I can't remember it. There we go. And we just put a new IP address in. This is going to curl the API and pull back all the data that we've just stored. Okay, and it's not very readable at all. Horrible raw JSON. So because I've installed JQ, we can get a more human readable format just by adding JQ on, and we can see all that, and that's really good. But there's a ton of it, and making head and tail of that is going to be quite tricky. But obviously JQ makes that easy for us. So what we're going to do as well is we're going to create a data set so that we don't constantly keep having to curl a remote API. So I'll just do the same thing here. I get my IP address. In fact, just run that. So this then puts it into a dataset.json file, and I can make this file available inside. Once you sign up again inside Slack, we've already got the document here. I can make this data set available as well, so that you can actually practice your curls against that. So you're not touching any of your own machines. You can get a feel for how it works. So we've just created the data set. It's all raw data. That's the file. So if we just do a couple of examples, let's just check the data set works. Yep, that's the same output, which is cool. And then just a couple of examples. So let's list out all the OS types. So across your entire network, all the servers that you've run this on, it will tell you what you've got. So we've got 3 8.2 servers, we've got 9 Ubuntu 18.04, we've even got a couple of Windows servers in the mix, 2016 and 2019. So that's quite handy to know. We can even generate a list. But this one is using contains and a select statement. I'll let Solomon explain that. And this just generates a list of servers for us. Now this suddenly gets interesting because we can now manipulate the data and pull out the server names of what it is we actually want. So if we take this and just change it to, and there are 9 there, and there's 9 18.04s. If we change this to 8.2, we get the free servers here. These are my Azure servers that match up with this. So it's telling us the truth. We can trust it, and it's correct. So now we move from just the basic data through to custom facts. So if we go back on, you can follow a link at the top, or just come to custom extensions. And in my directory, so people keep wanting to come in, so I have to admit them. So in my custom directory, we're just going to download straight here. So git clone, and it's going to come, just whack it straight in. And there it is. Now, if we cat the directory and the main.yaml file, so this runs as a loop, and it runs all these different. So first of all, it cleans up after itself. Even if it hasn't run, it will do it again the next time it runs. We do some sample facts. We'll talk through these while it runs because it takes a second. So I'm going to go and collect loads of specific information about all our servers, and then we're going to use JQ to pull that information out. So again, let's just run Ansible. So you don't have to do anything. You literally pull it down, hash out what you don't want to run, and just run it. So it's now going to take probably a minute or two to run. It's going to go and collect all that data. And I'm going to pass to Toby to just talk through some of those tests, some of those collections and why they're useful, why you want to do it.
Hey guys, so when we first started doing this, we were writing in some, in fact, I think the first one we did, which was a lot of pain, was starting to look at CIS. But we were starting to hard code stuff into plugins and things like that, which we just felt was the wrong way, as some people might not want CIS, and equally it's just not the right way to do stuff. You want to give people that granular control, really. So we came up with custom extensions. Essentially, it's a folder that you can put playbooks, scripts, things like that into it. And then, as Dennis showed you, you can comment them out or uncomment them out. So we've done a few just to kind of give an example of how to do it. And then we leave it up to the people that want to use it and want to write them all, really. We're happy for pull requests and changes to be made to the ones that we've done. Happy to accept, uploads of new ones that you guys write. It might become quite a nice little group of extensions. So we've done a bit of CIS for Red Hat 7. CIS is very difficult to write checks for. So Dennis was pulling his hair out and writing a hell of a load of them. We've done network information. So, network details, IP address, subnets, and things like that. Something Dennis hasn't talked about, which I will talk about a little at the end, is a way for, things in that setup file that you may not want to hold in a database. Some people are a bit funny about holding IP addresses in CMDBs, or, secret information that they might have as a fact. They don't want it outside of the server. I'll talk a little bit more about that at the end. And that's just finished, but we've got in there, so we've got network information, packages, port information, so we've got which ports are open, and also all the system CTL settings. And I'll pass back to you now, Dennis.
Yeah, cheers. So the one thing you must remember to do is to update your data set. Once you've gone to the database and put new data in it, take another copy, otherwise you won't find your data and you'll think something's gone wrong. So now that we have it, let's just look at all the local facts. So this is custom facts that I've set up. It won't necessarily work for your environment and you may have to customize it. If we have a look at what I've got, we can see that every server now has a local facts file. And inside that file, we've assigned it's pulled out the region that it works in. It's pulled out production, an environment. So which environment it's in. We know the instance type. We know the cloud it's in. So as we come up, we can see we've got AWS. We can see that we've got, am I missing it? There we go. We've got an Azure, UK South. So it's pretty much AWS and Azure. It will work just the same on a physical server or a VM. I'm just using AWS because that's what I've got. So let's look at something else. So let's look at a specific region. So we're going to look, so again, it's a custom fact. Let's look at what we've got in each region. So straight away, I know in AP South, I've got 9 servers. In South 1B, I've got 5. I've got 4 Azure servers here. So straight away, let's do something else. This one's quite interesting. So again, if you join up to the Slack channel, you get access to this document and the data set, and we can just make that available. You've got all these different JQ examples. If we have a look at this one, we can see that in EU West 1C, we've got 3 T2 mediums. We've got 3 of these in UK South 1 and 1 of those, not up on Azure instance types. But we can see that, again, we've got 4 T2 smalls in South 1A. So it's pretty useful. Again, we've got some other quicker ones here. If you want to look at like the ports, on different servers, it's not necessarily collected on every server because different OSs need different commands, but you can customize it to your OS. We can see here that we've got a load of open ports here. So we're collecting this data. So you could potentially look at, on a Friday, look at what open ports you've got on servers and then do a comparison. We've got CIS. So these are some of the CIS tests that we've done. So we can see that it's either passing or failing, quite useful. I remember when I was working at WellPay, you go to the security team, say, can I have a scan, please? Can you pass me the XML or whatever format? And it would take 4 days just to get it, I mean, if you've got one of these, you can get that sort of information almost instantly. So, and again, let's look at the interfaces. So again, not collected on everything, but the ones we do collect it on, you know, these are all DHCP. They're all standard AWS stuff, but yours will pull out your own information. So again, you've got access to it. It's quite useful. Moving on, another very interesting thing is dynamic inventories. So people kind of don't necessarily like them. They can be quite difficult to set up. When I went through this process, it's like, that doesn't work. You know, I had to raise a Stack Overflow request just to get someone to help me to finish it off and get it to come out in the right format. And then I realized it should have been a Solomon, what's the one with square brackets?
Iterator. Which one?
Yeah.
Which one?
And yeah, so it had to be, I think it had to be in that format as opposed to just dictionary. So anyway, something I found out on my journey. So if we take an example of, you've got something failing, a CIS check. I'll pick this one called aid. You know, and at the moment, again, straight out of the database, I can see that a load of these servers don't have aid installed, so therefore failing. They're picking up this message, failed package aid, when they're looking at the CIS facts. So I know that straight away that they're failing. So what we can do is we can create a script. Now this won't be the best way. This is one way. There will be other people that will look at this and refactor it in a slightly different way. That's fair enough, but it does work. So I've got a dynamic script, and if we just run the dynamic script here, it will then produce the same list, but in the format that Ansible wants it for a dynamic inventory. If we use that dynamic inventory in an Ansible command line script, so you can see here -i, instead of pointing to a physical directory, I'm pointing to the script, and that script is going to produce this output, and Ansible can use that to run this command against that set of servers, which is very powerful. You know, I can target 1 or 100 or 2 servers that meet a specific fact that I've got set. So now let's install aid on those servers using the same dynamic inventory. This will go off and install it for me. We should see that come back in a second. Yep, not the nicest output, but it means the same thing. It's been done. And now to prove it, we're going to have to run the deploy again. So that's going to run again for another minute or minute and a half or so. And when it finishes, we'll actually run this test again and see if it's finished and it's now passing. So yeah, I'll let that run. So I hope you can sort of see the sort of power here. You know, if you collect facts, use the ones that we've already generated, add your own, you can actually get some very powerful information back very quickly. You know, if you've got 5,000 servers like I had, and I had a tool like this, I could find out the information I needed very quickly. In fact, I could just give my manager the data set, tell him the command to run, and he could do it. You know, what's the point of me doing it? You know, it's got a lot of advantages, and it's very quick. Yeah, there'll be some setup, but once you've got that in place and it gets the right facts, the job is done until you decide what else you need to know, and then you'll ask another question in Ansible. So I don't know, have you got anything to add at this point, Toby, just while we wait?
No, not at all. So the only question which I've answered was about how you got the AWS facts. So for the purpose of this demo, you know, Dennis has just written some custom facts and he's just put them on the server. We're not querying AWS at all to gather those facts. However, we did do some work. AWS provides a internal, you can basically curl your internal 169 IP address with some parameters after it to gather what you need out. So you can gather all your tags, you can gather public and private IP addresses and stuff like that. So it wouldn't be difficult to write a custom extension that does that on all the servers that you want the value out, write it to a fact file and gather those facts. We're about 90% there of doing it. We did it quite recently. It's not difficult to do at all, but for this demo, that's not the case. It's literally just Dennis putting some demo data in there just to show you guys the power of what it can do.
Yeah. The beauty of this is, although I've used root access to do some of the stuff to fix the CIS stuff, all of this runs without root access. You don't need root, which is why I can collect the AWS facts, because I can just curl the metadata from AWS directly and I can pull out the bits I need. If you wanted to get into like tags and all the other stuff that you can have in AWS, you'd need to have AWS CLI installed, and you'd need to provide it with the credentials to be able to access that data. And I don't know what your data is. There's no point adding that in. I can't do that. So I've used their metadata to pull it out, to give some facts, but there's nothing stopping you writing your own or installing the packages that you need to pull out that data, and giving yourself the access to do it as well. So it's finished. Let's rerun the, oh, do you remember what we have to do? We have to curl, we have to update the data set, otherwise the data won't be right. So that hasn't happened before. Right, so now we can literally run this again, and we get an empty list. If we look at the CIS facts from here, then if we look up, if we find aid, there it is. So it's actually passed. Well, I think, where is it? If we look before, yeah, it was failing, and now it's passing. So, yeah, that's it. So, yeah, if you join the Slack channel to sign up, you'll get sent a copy of this document. I'm going to stick the data center in the Slack channel. Put any questions in there, put any facts you want to know. We can give you some help on how to sort of grab those facts and how it works. But it's only Ansible. Anyone can read it. Anyone can add to it. It's, you know, it's very simple and straightforward. So yeah, with that note, apart from the questions we've already had in the chat, would anyone like to ask any other questions? Oh, I can see in the chat. So Wildek has asked, how often are the facts refreshed? So they don't refresh. You run the deploy and it goes and collects them. You could do that at 4 o'clock in the morning, or you could do it every 10 minutes. It's entirely up to you. So if you've made a change and you need to refresh your facts, rerun it. And you could just rerun it on the one server where you've changed your facts. Yeah, it's totally up to you. You can cron it if you want it run every day. Yeah, it's just a manual task. Yeah, so the Slack channel, the way Slack works is you can't, let me post this in, is you can't just join a Slack channel. You kind of have to be sort of added. So what we've done is we've created a list that if you put your details in here, so you don't have to give us your email address in public, we'll add your email address in, and then you'll get an invite to the Slack channel. And then as part of that, you'll get some information about this talk, and you'll get the document, and then you can go to the Slack channel and get the data set and have a practice. So on that note, I am finished. Is there anything else you'd like to finish with, Toby?
I was just going to quickly talk, and we didn't discuss this, Dennis, so sorry to put you on there.
Quick. Yeah.
Yeah, so one thing we talked about when we first started doing this is, you know, data that you might not want to store. So built into the Ansible plugin is a Json filter where you can put the names of the key of values that you do not want to store. So for example, you might not want to store IP address. And I'll put some details. I'm trying to remember where the file is. It's somewhere in your collection. That's it, sanitized keys. But anyway, this file that we'll go and find, as it's very, it's there somewhere. Anyway, so it's a JSON file with keys. You put your keys in there, and then when Ansible runs, you know, it ensures they go. The file will be empty. You put your keys in there, and then it essentially overwrites the key, so you never ever post it to the API. It just rewrites the value of that key value pair. Oh, okay, yeah, we'll look at that. But that file is around and it does work. So, you know, if that is useful to people, let us know. And we will show you. Oh, it's called keys to sanitize. There you go.
Yeah, so you can put them just in.
Yeah, you just put
comma separated. Yeah,
comma separated list of.
Yeah, so you might want to put Ansible IPv4, for example. So you're not storing your IP address. You might want to, you know, put your domain in there, and it's just comma separated list.